Africa did not fall silently. It was surrounded, challenged, and tested, but never passive. Long before foreign flags appeared on its soil, Africa was alive with kingdoms, cities, and peoples that governed themselves. Trade routes stretched across deserts and rivers, connecting empires that understood diplomacy, law, and warfare. Knowledge traveled faster than armies, and decisions were made not for outsiders, but for survival. Africa had history before imperialism arrived. Africa had power before invasion began. Then came the ships, carrying men convinced the world could be owned. They arrived with maps, treaties, and weapons, carrying the certainty that Africa's riches and people were theirs for the taking. They spoke of civilization, progress, and order, disguising greed as morality. At first, the takeover appeared subtle. Missionaries brought books, explorers brought maps, traders brought contracts. Each interaction collected information, mapped weaknesses, and measured how quickly people might bend to foreign will. But beneath the surface, the intent was simple: Africa would be divided, dominated, and subdued. Europe met Africa with arrogance. They assumed conquest would be easy. They assumed resistance would crumble. They assumed African kingdoms could not fight back with strategy, courage, and patience. But Africa did not respond all at once. It responded everywhere. In the highlands of Ethiopia, Italy assumed victory was inevitable. Menelik too understood otherwise. He did not charge blindly into battle. He prepared. Weapons were gathered. Messages moved across mountains and valleys. Old rivalries were set aside for unity. Farmers trained beside soldiers. Women marched alongside men. Ethiopia did not panic, it waited. And when Italy advanced, confident and certain, they met coordination, strategy, and resolve. At Adwa, the impossible unfolded. Italian lines collapsed under the weight of preparation and determination. Europe had expected an easy victory, and instead, it witnessed humiliation. Ethiopia stood undefeated. The victory did not simply save a nation. It shattered the narrative of inevitability that imperialism relied upon. Across Africa and the Black world, the message was clear: resistance is possible, defiance is effective, and oppression is never preordained. But victory in one place did not stop invasion elsewhere. It only changed its tone. In southern Africa, the British Empire marched forward, assuming Africa would yield without cost. Redcoats and rifles advanced with confidence. The Zulu kingdom did not meet assumptions with fear. They met them with formation. Zulu forces moved with unmatched discipline, strategy, and speed. At Isandlwana, British lines shattered. Confidence became confusion. The empire realized its power was not absolute. Though the Zulu would eventually face overwhelming force, that moment could not be erased. African resistance was deliberate, organized, and tactical. Further west, Samori Touré demonstrated that survival could itself be a weapon. France expected a quick surrender. Samori refused. He moved entire populations, relocated villages, and struck only when advantage was clear. Guerrilla warfare became an art. France pursued him for over 15 years, facing exhaustion, frustration, and embarrassment. When France finally captured Samori, they took his body but never his defiance. Resistance is not always measured by territory. Resistance is measured by spirit. Women across Africa carried resistance where armies could not. In the Ashanti Kingdom, when the British demanded the golden stool, the sacred symbol of the people, chiefs hesitated. Yasantawa stood. She spoke not with fear but with certainty, commanding warriors, inspiring unity, and leading the defense herself. Fortifications rose, and fighters rallied. The British would eventually suppress the uprising, but they could not erase the truth: African women were not symbols, they were leaders, strategists, and protectors of memory. Across the continent, women carried intelligence, preserved culture, and sustained defiance long after battles ended. Even when empires used industrial power, machine guns, reinforcements, and global logistics, Africa continued to resist. Industrial might could not erase knowledge, memory, or courage. Battles may have been lost, lands may have been occupied, but spirits endured. Resistance delayed conquest, exposed brutality, shattered the narrative of consent. Colonial rule survived by force, not legitimacy. And force always leaves scars. Those scars became memory. Memory became identity. And identity became the foundation for the generations that would follow. From the soldiers of Adwa to the strategists of Zulu, from the guerrillas of Samori to the warriors of Yasantua, the stories of resistance survived. They inspired future leaders and created consciousness that could not be extinguished. Africa was never conquered in spirit. Occupation came, borders were imposed, flags were planted. But the continent never surrendered its mind, its memory, or its power. Resistance evolved. It changed form. Guerrilla warfare became political strategy. Spiritual defiance became organized movements. Cultural memory became nationalism. Africa never stopped fighting. And as long as these stories are remembered, Africa continues to resist. Africa fought back. Africa adapted. Africa endured. Africa remembered. And that remembrance is the most dangerous weapon any empire has ever faced. Because memory cannot be taken. It cannot be destroyed. And it cannot be conquered.